Hello and welcome to Healthy Food and Food Elimination. This is the first class in a series for your program. We're excited that you've joined us. You've decided to join the Rosa Transformational Health Wellness Program. In this class today, we are going to give you an overview of some essentials of nutrition. We're going to discuss what a healthy diet is. A lot of confusion in that area. We hope to clear up for you. We're going to talk about quality and quantity, the importance of nutrient diversity, food elimination. So I'm going to give you week by week how your food elimination is going to go. And then we're going to put it all together for you. We're going to give you the big picture, which I think is really important. Once you have the pieces, then you can put it together as a whole, and you'll have much greater understanding for the hows and the whys. So, when we look at the essentials of nutrition, there's three main things to look at. We look at macronutrients, which are your carbohydrates, protein, and fat, and these are where you get your calories from. Then there's micronutrients, which would be your vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals. They do not contain caloric value, but they are essential to the optimal functioning of your physiology. And then there's phytonutrients, which, in my opinion, are really important compounds, plant compounds, that interface with our biochemistry, but are not technically considered essential. But I think perhaps after we go through it, you'll understand why they are essential, and we're going to address that when we get to the nutrient diversity section of this talk. So carbohydrates, all carbohydrates break down into glucose, also known as blood sugar, in the body. They provide energy for the brain. In fact, the brain consumes about 20 to 25% of the body's total glucose. So it's very glucose needy. It's a quick energy source for muscles. In fact, when your muscles will store glucose in the form of glycogen, and about the first 20 to 30 minutes of exercise, you're just burning off your glucose and glycogen stores. Carbohydrates help regulate protein and fat metabolism, also provide a source of fiber, so insoluble fiber and soluble fibers all come from carbohydrate-rich foods. And carbohydrates are found in grains, legumes, so your beans, lentils, peanuts, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some dairy, and your sweeteners like honey, sugar, maple syrup, all are a source of carbohydrates. So what is a good carbohydrate? So a good carbohydrate would be the carbohydrates on the right. So the carbohydrates on the right are your plant matter, your vegetables, your fruits. Those are really healthy carbohydrates. And then your carbohydrates there on the left image, the grains, those are the carbs that we would tend to want to avoid. They can spike the blood sugar really high, which comes with an associated insulin surge. And this has a variety of effects on your cardiovascular health and your neuronal health. So humans have been eating vegetables, root vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds for a really long time. And grains are the most recent introduction into the human diet, and they tend to be the one we have the most difficulty with. They're very hard to digest. They spike our blood sugar. They flood the system with sugar, and are not the best choice as far as carbohydrates are concerned. So dietary proteins are broken down into individual amino acids, and then once they're absorbed, they're recombined into new human proteins. And this is a really amazing experience here, because when we take in any kind of food, all food has protein in it. Actually, life in general is made by and of proteins. We're going to talk about that in just a minute in the next slide. But when you consume a piece of meat, the protein that is in that meat is comprised of individual amino acids that are put into particular strands, and which make up proteins. In the digestive process, you have to break those proteins back down into their individual amino acids. And at that point, those individual amino acids can cross the threshold of the digestive tract into the digestive capillaries, into the bloodstream, eventually to the liver, where they're recombined and they form new proteins that are your specific proteins. And so another way I like to look at proteins is that they are dynamic life forces that can bind to cell membranes, partner with other proteins to form complexes, or undergo synthesis and degradation, which are just fancy words for birth and death. So they're constantly undergoing a degrading process and then being recombined into new proteins, and then degraded and recombined and degraded and recombined. So they are given birth, then they die, then they're reborn, and then they die, and then they're reborn. And so it's really quite a fascinating process that takes place. So as I said a moment ago, we are made by and of proteins. And this is just a list of the different proteins that exist, or classification, I should say, of proteins that exist or in the human body. So hormones have a protein component to them, and hormones are cellular messengers. So insulin would be an example of this, where when the blood sugar starts to rise, the pancreas releases insulin, and that is the chaperone for glucose into our cells. Enzymes, which are the sparks of life or the catalysts of life, these help chemical reactions take place. They help with the digestion of food, usually ending in ACE, so protease, lipase, amylase. So those are different examples of enzymes. Proteins provide a structure component. So fibrous proteins are necessary for muscles, bones, tendons, skin, cartilage. So things like collagen would be an example of that. Storage functions. So a lot of times there are storage proteins for minerals. As an example, ferritin is a storage protein for iron. Then there's transport proteins, and these will carry vital life forces to our cells. So an example of that would be hemoglobin in the red blood cell. It is what carries and delivers oxygen. Then there are defensive proteins. So these are our antibodies or immunoglobulins. This is our immune system at work here. There are receptor proteins. These will control what substances enter and leave the cell. So a neurotransmitter receptor, so a receptor for dopamine or serotonin, will have a protein component to it. And then finally, there are contractile proteins, and these would be motor proteins that are involved with muscle contraction or release. So actin and myosin would be examples of contractile proteins that exist in our body. So we are literally made by and of proteins. So it's our proteins, or the field of proteomics, which is looking at all the different proteins that are involved with turning on and off various gene expressions and making us who we are today. Then there's fat. Fat has been so maligned in the world of nutrition. We live in a fat-phobic culture right now that is suffering from a lot of misinformation about fat. So many people believe that fat is bad, or specifically saturated fat is bad, and the research just shows over and over again how necessary fat is for the healthy functioning of the human physiology. One, it is a high quality energy source. So in fat, there's 9 calories per gram, whereas in protein or carbohydrates, you're looking at 4 calories per gram. So fat is a really high quality energy source. It's the building block for cell membranes and hormones, and our cell membranes are basically the protective barrier, or you could call it the boundary layer for our cells, and the membranes determine what nutrients or phytochemicals can come into the cell, and then what wastes are going to go out. And so the cell membrane is actually a lipid bilayer. It's 2 layers of fat. And all your receptors, your cell receptors, are around the membrane. And I always I call the membrane, the cell membrane, the sense perceptive organ for our cells. So it's like our eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. So just as we use our sense organs to take in the external world so that we know what we're around, that's what informs us of our environment, so too does the membrane take in what the environment of the cell is in, and provides that information to the cell, and the cell can make adjustments based on that information. So very important, and it's fat, and it requires all different kinds of fat. It requires omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-9s. It requires saturated fat. The only fat it doesn't require is trans or hydrogenated fats. Those are actually seriously detrimental to our cell membranes. Fats required for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. It serves as a protective lining for our organs. It's kind of like a cushioning agent for our organs. It slows the absorption of food for proper energy regulation, so it can help maintain steady, stable energy levels rather than quick highs and lows. And last but certainly not least, fat equals flavor. No fat, no flavor is a age-old saying, but it's true. So there's a couple of different kinds of fats. There's saturated fat, which is highly stable and solid at room temperature. This is found in animal fats and tropical oils like coconut oil or palm oil. This is why they're solid at room temperature. Then you have monounsaturated fat, where there is 1 point of unsaturation by a hydrogen ion. And this is relatively stable. It doesn't go rancid easily. It's liquid at room temperature. But once you put it in the fridge and it drops to a cold temperature, it starts to get cloudy and solidify. And that's because it's unsaturated. And this is found primarily in olive and avocado oils, as well as various nuts. And then there's polyunsaturated. So this is multiple points of unsaturation in the carbon chain by hydrogen ions of a fat. And this is relatively unstable. They go rancid easily. They're liquid at room temperature. They're liquid in the refrigerator. They're liquid in the freezer. They don't really harden and solidify like monounsaturated or saturated fats. You do not want to heat these. You don't want to cook with them. These are oils that should be used either for salad dressings or medicinally, like flax oil or hemp oil, or evening primrose, borage, and black currant seed oil. If you heat these, they can denature quickly, and so you want to avoid cooking with vegetable oils. I always recommend cooking with saturated fats, so whether it be butter, coconut oil, beef tallow, duck fat, bacon grease, those types of things are the types of fats that I recommend cooking at high temperatures with, because of the stability of the saturated fats. And then finally, you have essential fatty acids, and these are deemed essential because they cannot be manufactured by the body and must be consumed from food sources. The two main essential fatty acids are omega-3 and omega-6. And omega-3, we have EPA and DHA, which you find primarily in cold water fish like salmon or cod. And then you have ALA, or alpha-linoleic acid, which is found primarily in flax and hemp seeds. And then there's omega-6, and there's a few of those as well. The first one being GLA, or gamma-linolenic acid, and DGLA, dihomogamma-linoleic acid. And those are found primarily in evening primrose and blackcurrant and hemp and borage seeds. And then finally, there's linoleic acid, which is found in a lot of your refined cooking oils. And that is something I would encourage you to avoid, because linoleic acid tends to be pro-inflammatory, and we really don't want to be consuming the pro-inflammatory oils, because we have so much inflammation in our culture in this day and age, and we really want to reduce that inflammation. And in the physiology, the human physiology really requires about a 1 to 3.5 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. But in the modern era, we're looking at somewhere between the range of 1 to 20 or greater omega-3 to omega-6. So we're disproportionately high in our omega-6s, specifically from linoleic acid, which increases the inflammation in our bodies. Now, the seriously bad fats that you want to avoid are the hydrogenated fats, or partially hydrogenated, the highly processed vegetable oils, the fried fats. So these are all trans fatty acids that are toxic and interfere with the role all other good fats play in the cells and the body as a whole. And we could go on for a long time about the detrimental effects of trans and hydrogenated fats. So if you go in your cupboard and you look at your cookies or your crackers and your standard commercial snack foods, they all will have some sort of partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated soybean oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, and I highly recommend that you just throw those out. I would even look in your salad dressings as well. Look in the ingredients list of any of your packaged foods for partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated oils and get rid of them. So this brings us to, what is a healthy diet? Well, in my opinion, a healthy diet is a diet that is balanced, that it's a lifestyle. It's something that you can do easily as a lifestyle. It's not some sort of radical fad diet that's designed to be done for a short period of time and is really difficult to adhere to day in and day out. It should be colorful. The more colors, the better. I always recommend eating a rainbow of colors in your foods, natural ones, not artificial. So the more colorful your food, the greater the antioxidant activity in that food, the more diverse the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients are. So it should include diversity. So lots of different fruits, lots of different vegetables, different quality proteins. So diversity is key. It should be flavorful. It should be energizing. You should feel stable, steady energy, or you shouldn't feel erratic energy, like a really a blast of high energy followed by a crash. It should be steady, stable energy. And finally, it should be joyful. It should be something you have fun doing. It should not be a grudge. It should not be something you do because you, quote, have to. It should be something that you do because you want to and you find great joy in it. And that's really a healthy diet. Now, if you're expecting a prescription of what a healthy diet is. You're not going to get that here because each of us is different and we all require different things. So what is right for one individual is not necessarily right for another. And as you go through the program, we will talk more about that, and we will also offer you tools to identify what's right for you. Not everybody should be a vegetarian. Not everybody should be a vegan. Not everybody should eat one particular way. It's a truly individual experience. And so our mission is to guide you into what the right diet for you is, rather than hold on to some ideology of what the right, the quote right diet is. So when you eat, one way to know if you're eating in a way that is right for you is that when you're done eating, you should feel full and satisfied. You shouldn't be craving sweets or have a desire for more food. Or you shouldn't feel full yet craving something. You shouldn't need to snack before the next meal. Your meal should hold you over until the next time you're ready to eat. So breakfast should hold you over to lunch, and lunch should hold you over to dinner. Your energy should feel renewed. You should have a good, lasting, normal sense of energy, as I've already mentioned, a sense of improved well-being, or a feeling of being refueled, renewed, and restored. There could be some emotional upliftment there, improved mental clarity and sharpness, and a normalization of your thought processes. If when you eat, you have those experiences, that is how you know you're eating a healthy diet. If you have the opposite experience of what is in this list, then there is some fine-tuning to do, and we're going to help you with that. So this is, in my opinion, an example of some really good, healthy meals right here. I tend to personally steer towards paleo because it's what works for me. It's what my body thrives on. But this is a great example here where you're looking at lots of vegetables, lots of quality protein, quality fats, and this is these are the types of meals that will give you a long-lasting sense of energy. You'll be feeling full and satisfied. Your blood sugar isn't going to go up too fast. You're not going to get a crash after it. And so this is an example of what healthy eating can look like. And in my opinion, that's makes me salivate. I'm ready to eat those. So let's talk a little bit about quality and quantity. So more important than quantity or calories is quality. In my opinion, food quality is the biggest issue today in regards to nutrition. So we have seen the degradation of our food quality in a way that has never happened in human history. The food quality today is at its lowest in the human experience. Our food is heavily refined and processed for the most part, devoid of almost all nutrients. It's loaded with calories and very little nutrients. So nutrient-dense foods, which is what I highly recommend, which is that previous slide, those are all nutrient-dense foods, vegetables, quality protein, quality fats. These provide a high amount of nutrients compared to calories, and so it's therefore much more sustaining. But when you eat a lot of refined processed foods, they offer you a tremendous amount of calories with little to no nutrients. And we've gone through the agricultural revolution, where we transitioned from being hunter-gatherer societies into agrarian societies, which has allowed us to store food, feed more people, so it could, a higher population can be fed. But what we've done over the last 10,000 years is it dramatically reduced our agrobiodiversity, which means that we've also reduced the variety of nutrients we're getting as well from our food. But then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Industrial Revolution hit, and we began to refine and process our foods. So a lot of our grains started to become refined and processed. We stripped the fiber out of it. We stripped the germ out of it, and basically stripped the vitamins and minerals out of it. And then now we're in the technological era where we're looking at genetically modified foods. And that's kind of like Pandora's box. So our food has really been under assault over the last 100 years or so. And that is a real problem today. So if we look at food quality today, the way to get back to quality is to eat organic, sustainably grown produce. I highly recommend going to farmers markets, shaking the hand that feeds you, get to know your farmers, grow your own if you can, have your own little garden, eat as much organic as possible. When you buy meat, make sure the beef is grass-fed and finished. You want to avoid grain-fed meats because that increases the pro-inflammatory omega-6s and reduces the anti-inflammatory omega-3s. With your chicken, you want to make sure it's free-range, organic. You really don't want your animals having done drugs. So you don't want your animals having been given prophylactic antibiotics, hormones or steroids that are going to make them produce more milk or grow faster, grow to be bigger in shorter amount of time. You really want your animals to have access to pasture, the chickens to be able to peck and scratch and exude their normal chicken behaviors, whereas the reality is that most that conventionally raised chickens never see the light of day. Layers, like the chickens that are laying eggs, their cages are usually smaller than an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper squared, so it's about 62 inches squared. So we really want to get back to where our animals are able to just live their normal, natural lives and where they're considered soulful living beings and not commodities. If you're eating fish, you want to make sure that it's wild caught, preferably line caught. You want to avoid the farmed fish. You want to avoid as much pesticide-laden produce as possible. Pesticides tend to be neurotoxins and hormone disruptors. So in a nutshell, organic, sustainable, local, grass-fed and finished, free-range, wild caught. Those are the things you're really looking for as far as quality of food is concerned. Farmers markets are a great place to go to get to know farmers. They can be a tremendous resource for you as you seek out new alternatives for yourself. And as Aristotle said, quality is not an act, but a habit. And the more you do this, the more that you eat quality food, it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your routine, and your body will thank you for it. So as I mentioned earlier, nutrient diversity is really important. And I consider this the second biggest issue in regards to nutrition today. If we look at our ancestors, our Paleolithic ancestors who were hunter-gatherers, they consumed on average 95 to 300 plus different plants for food and medicine. And today, 2/3 of the world's food supply comes from just 3: wheat, rice, and corn. and 90% of the world's food supply comes from just 15 different foods. So we've gone from 300 plus foods down to 3 to 15. And those three, wheat, rice, and corn, are really high in calories, but they're really low in nutrients. So what we are experiencing today from this decrease in agrobiodiversity is a major decrease in nutrient and phytonutrient diversity. And you can actually trace this decrease in biodiversity and nutrient diversity with a decrease in human health. So you really want to make sure that you are getting as much of variety as you possibly can. So let's transition into the food elimination, because this is the first big thing you're going to be doing in the program. Is you're going to start a 6-week process of eliminating various foods from your diet. And you'll be amazed at the results you see from this. And your normal today will be dramatically different from your normal in 6 weeks' time, as far as what you eat and how you feel. So week 1, we're going to remove all caffeine and all artificial sweeteners. You can find this information also on page 30 of your guidebook. So page 30, chapter 1, goes through all 6 weeks of food elimination. I highly recommend that you take that, make a copy of it, put some dates in there so you know when you start a week and finish a week, and put it on your refrigerator so you're always aware of what you're doing there. But week 1, we're going to remove all caffeine and all artificial sweeteners. So that means coffee, black and green teas, oolong teas, yerba mate. Yes, chocolate. I know that is incredibly sad, but chocolate does have caffeine in it. All soft drinks that have caffeine and artificial sweeteners. So no aspartame, no saccharin, no Equal, no Splenda. Those are your artificial sweeteners. If you do protein shakes, no potassium asulfate. That's another artificial sweetener. So no energy drinks like Monster, Rockstar, Red Bull. And this also includes all decaffeinated coffee and black and green teas, as there is still some caffeine in those, but not non-caffeinated herbal teas, right? So your herbal teas don't have caffeine in them. And then, so here's the list of artificial sweeteners as well. Aspartame, also known as NutraSweet, saccharin, Splenda, Equal, and asulfame potassium. In week 2, we're going to remove all sugar and fruit juice, which is just concentrated sugar, excluding the cranberry drink that you're doing for the program. So sugar, anything that ends in ose, so sucrose, fructose, dextrose, maltose. So some of these in addition would be high fructose corn syrup, sucralose, evaporated cane juice, honey, molasses, maple syrup, agave nectar, maltodextrin. And this is just temporary. You know, this is just about 6 to 9 weeks period of time. This isn't forever. Hopefully it is forever for things like high fructose corn syrup, sucralose, maltodextrin, but honey, molasses, maple syrup, all that can come back in eventually. And it's also important to know that the main source of refined sugar is from sugar beets, which are predominantly genetically modified. So you really, whenever you see sugar, it's probably sugar beets. So as you go down this path, you want to stick with the cane sugar. And if you don't think sugar is dangerous or isn't a drug, here's a PET scan of the limbic system of the brain, the emotional processing center of the brain. And if you notice here, sugar lights up the limbic system with greater intensity than cocaine, which you can extrapolate that sugar is probably more addictive than cocaine even. So this is one of the reasons why we want to take a break from sugar. We want to get you, as I said a little bit ago, to a new normal and a much healthier normal. Moving on to week 3, we're going to remove all gluten and all corn. So gluten is, the gluten-containing grains are wheat, rye, barley, spelt, kamut, triticale, and most oats. Oats do not inherently contain gluten, but they're predominantly contaminated with gluten due to processing facilities and harvesting. Oats have a protein in it called avenin, which is a fairly difficult protein to digest also. But gluten is a combination of gliadin and glutenin. And gliadin is what's called a prolamin, which is a type of seed storage protein that is resistant to digestion by your protein digesting enzymes, pepsin in the stomach, and then trypsin and chymotrypsin from the pancreas and the cells of the small intestine. And what this will tend to do is loosen the tight junctions of the epithelial cells of the small intestine, which will eventually lead to leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And corn, the reason why we're eliminating corn is because it has a protein called zyme, which is also a prolamin. So we want to get you off of the gluten in the corn, start to ease the inflammation going on in the gut, and start to reduce any kind of digestive symptoms you might have that are associated with gluten-containing grains and corn. And this is a little slide here on how gluten affects the epithelial cells of the small intestine. So if you look over here on the left side of this image, you'll see that there is 2 cells that are tightly together there, and that little space between them is the tight junction, and that is what a healthy intestinal cell should look like. And those little projections on the top are the villi where nutrient absorption occurs. And when you consume gluten tends to weaken that tight junction, and you can see how it opens the space up between the epithelial cells, and that allows these undigested protein particles to get into the bloodstream. And so you're looking at leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, which will trigger the immune system to attack those protein particles because they're foreign invaders. They're not supposed to be there. And as this happens over time, what begins to happen is those the mucosal lining of the small intestine and the epithelial cells will begin to atrophy and die. And that's what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the slide, is where the small intestinal cells are atrophying, they're dying. That's apoptosis. And so you begin to get reduced nutrient absorption. And as time goes on, the immune system starts to misinterpret your own tissue as being a foreign invader, and it begins to produce antibodies to your own tissue, and it starts to attack your tissue, and that is an autoimmune disorder. A lot of physicians in this day who practice functional medicine or integrative medicine recognize that leaky gut is one of the leading causes, if not the primary cause, of most autoimmune conditions today. So what we want to do is get you off of these pro-inflammatory foods, get you off these foods that are going to cause this degradation of the lining of the small intestine, start to heal the gut, and hopefully begin turning around any kind of chronic inflammatory, chronic degenerative, or autoimmune conditions that you might have. As we move into week 4, we're going to remove all grains. So that would be oats, that would be rice. We're going to remove soy, dairy, as well as alcohol. And most grains contain prolamins, which are resistant to digestion. Soy contains trypsin inhibitors. So soy is only really fully digestible when it's fermented. So miso and natto or tempeh. And And then dairy consists of about 80% casein and 20% whey. Those are the two proteins found in dairy. And casein, in particular, something called beta-casein, is the culprit for most dairy allergies today. It's also a potent opiate that's implicated in a variety of conditions such as autoimmune disease and heart disease, as well as neurologic disorders. So we want to get you off the dairy for a while too. We're just cleaning out the system. So we move into week 5. We're going to remove all eggs, shellfish, and legumes. And just so you know, it just comes to me now to mention this to you. This is compounding. So as you remove a food, you're going to stay off that food for this entire time. So you're not just removing it for the week. You're removing sugar for the duration of the time you're going through the elimination diet. So it's not just week to week. It's literally you remove it and it stays out for the entire time you're doing the elimination. So egg is one of the most common food allergens. It's a potent histamine liberator from mast cells, so it can cause hives and just different allergic reactions in people. Shellfish, obviously one of the most common and dangerous food allergens. Usually if somebody's allergic to that, they'll experience anaphylactic shock. Not a good thing. And then legumes such as chickpeas, lentils, soybeans, peanuts, and peas, these all contain prolamins, which makes their proteins not fully digestible. Once again, we're just easing the digestive burden here. And then finally, as we move into week 6, we're going to remove all nightshade vegetables. And so nightshades contain a suite of alkaloids that can be pro-inflammatory and irritating, causing joint pain, GI upset, and other inflammatory conditions. So nightshades are the Solanaceae family. So that would be tomatoes, tomatillos, potatoes, not sweet potatoes or yams, but your white and red potatoes, and eggplants, all peppers, sweet, hot, bland, so all your peppers, as well as tobacco. That is your Solanaceae family. That is your nightshades. And so week 6, those are going to come out. And you might find that if you've had arthritic type symptoms, all of a sudden you don't have that anymore once you remove these foods. And it'll be really telling when you reintroduce them back in, if your pain or inflammation or joint swelling went away, that when you bring them back in, if it doesn't come back, that's going to let you know if those foods are an issue for you. So putting it all together, what should your plate look like? Well, your plate should be half of it should consist of vegetables, whether it be salad, steamed, sautéed vegetables. So half your plate in vegetables. You should always have a quality protein source. When you eat meat as your quality protein, just about the size of your palm. So the size of your palm, the thickness of your palm. That doesn't include your fingers, just your palm. And also quality fats. So olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, olives, those are all good quality fats. What is optional is the carbohydrates that you would get from grains, beans, legumes, and obviously as you go through this elimination diet, those are going to be coming out. And finally, fruit, which you should really view as nature's dessert. You really don't want a lot of fruit. 1 to 3 servings a day of fruit is plenty. You do not need any more than that. If you are a typical American where you're not super active, you're not running marathons, you're not doing a few hours in the gym every day, you can meet all your carbohydrate needs from vegetables and a little bit of fruit. If you tend to be highly active, then you might want to incorporate some alternative grains like quinoa or amaranth into your diet. That way you can boost up your carbs and replenish your glucose stores. So here's some great examples of what your plate can look like. 2 of these you've already seen, but all of these, about half your plate in vegetables, some quality protein, some quality fat in there. Yes, you can have dessert. That dessert on the bottom left-hand corner there is an avocado chocolate mousse. Yes, you can make delicious avocado chocolate mousse. It is really good. I highly recommend you try it sometime if you've never tried it before. So does not have to be a diet of deprivation. It's just modifying the way you approach food and eliminating certain trigger foods or foods that we have found to be very inflammatory and not that beneficial for us, and finding a new way to eat that is delicious, that is satisfying, that is nourishing, that is anti-inflammatory, and will, over the long run, have you feeling better than you have in a long time. One of the side benefits of this is that you get blood sugar stability. So you stop riding the blood sugar roller coaster and that you see on that top part of the slide, and you enter into the lazy river, which is the bottom part of the slide. So you get stable blood sugar levels and not highs and lows, which come with physiological stress and increase our insulin levels, our fat storage, our brain fog, or our cortisol levels, our stress hormones. So we really want to bring the blood sugar back into balance there. So, warning, by starting this program, you may temporarily experience some challenges and obstacles. You might have cravings for sugar if you've been eating a lot of it over your lifetime. You might have cravings for your comfort food, that mac and cheese or those mashed potatoes. You might experience a little bit of digestive upset at the beginning. Your stomach's got to get used to all new food. You might also experience some self-sabotaging thoughts and emotions, feelings of inadequacy or you're not worthy or you can't do this. But trust me, we've had dozens of patients come through our clinic who have done this. So you can do it. And then finally, you might experience some conflict with family and friends who do not want you to change. Just know that these are some temporary experiences you might have. But also, warning, by starting this program, you may permanently experience more energy, less pain, less gas and bloating, clear thinking, stable emotions, weight loss, better sleep, and more positive moods. So we are excited that you're joining us on this journey. We look forward to hearing about how your health begins to improve, how you begin to turn your health around through this program. We're so grateful that we get to be the ones to usher you into this new lifestyle, this new way of living, that is focused on optimal and vibrant health, and let us know how you're doing. Keep us posted. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Send us an email, and we look forward to sharing with you in the next class.